Hello, everyone. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into my second webinar from the Kitten Care Webinar Series. If you missed the first one, it is recorded and you can watch that after you watch this one. The first one was on caring for itty bitty bottle babies. I had a super fun time. Excited to do this one too. I wanted to mention this webinar series is sponsored by Royal Canin. I'm very grateful to them for making it possible to bring you 4 weeks of kitten care webinars. And you can find more information about them at kittenlady.org/webinar. I will have a couple other webinars coming up. On May 2nd, I'll be doing a webinar on keeping kittens healthy. It's a really, really fun and very important topic. And then the fourth webinar will be May 9th, and that is on the subject of kittens found outdoors. What do you do with these various scenarios where you might encounter cats and kittens outside? I want to remind you that if you are registered for the webinar, you'll receive a follow-up email. If you registered for the last one, you got an email that had a bunch of additional resources in it, information, charts, things like that. So if you're watching this live but you have not registered, you can go to kittenlady.org/webinar. You can register for this webinar, Beyond the Bottle, and that'll give us access to your email so we can send you all of that follow-up information if you would like to do so. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, I hope that I'll be answering them with the content, but if there's something that I don't get to and you have an important question you'd like to ask, you can ask at any time by just typing it into the chat wherever you're watching, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching. We will be monitoring the questions and putting them together, and I'll answer questions at the end. I do just ask that you stay on the topic of today's subject, which is Beyond the Bottle, caring for growing kittens. We're going to be talking about kittens in that second month of life. So please, ask any questions that you have relevant to that topic. So I'll just quickly introduce myself for anyone who's watching for the first time who doesn't know me. My name is Hannah Shaw, and I am known as Kitten Lady. I run a humane education project, and what I do is teach people how to care for and protect the most vulnerable and tiny felines. So I focus on these little kittens in the 0 to 8 week old range. Obviously, these guys are some newborn babies, which we talked about last week in webinar 1. The first book that I have put out is Tiny But Mighty, and this is a book all about caring for kittens, and it's something that I hope is a helpful resource to you. It's more than 300 pages of kitten care information, so you can find that wherever books are sold. I also have a book called Kitten Lady's Big Book of Little Kittens, which is for children. And I am the founder of Orphan Kitten Club. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization that has a variety of different programs that protect kittens. We have things like grant programs, medical programs for kittens, and we also have a nursery. I have a nursery in my home here, and these are some of my current foster kittens. I thought I would show you these guys because I want you to know I'm not just teaching you, from a book or something like that. I'm teaching you really what I am physically doing every single day here. These guys I've had since they were just a couple days old. There's their baby photos. Actually, no, I've had them since they were a couple hours old. And, something I love about fostering kittens is you get to see them go through these different life stages, from being this little tiny jelly bean to opening their eyes to starting to navigate the world around them. This top photo, they're about 3 weeks old. And now they're about 5 weeks old, and this is a photo from just yesterday. They're super, super sweet. 5 weeks is a really fun age too. So I'm doing everything that we're talking about in this talk today. I'm doing with these kittens, and I'm going to share with you the information that I've learned through more than 10 years of working with these little guys. So I think that the important place to start is identifying a kitten's age. We did talk about some of this last time, but I want to go into this 3 to 8 week range. 3-week-old kittens, that is, a kitten who's going to have their eyes open. They're going to have some teeth emerging at the front of their mouth, the incisors. And this is the age where they might slowly start being being interested in the litter box, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. 4-week-old kittens, that's a really exciting age. Their eyesight is really improving. They're becoming much more coordinated. These kittens are going to have their canine teeth. They're going to be starting to play, and that's the age that we're really going to start ramping up that enrichment, that playtime, access to toys. A 5-week-old kitten is a kitten who has a mouth full of baby teeth, and these kittens are going to be starting to wean onto their wet kitten food. So that's half of this talk is going to be about weaning. It's my favorite subject, but I want you to know what a 5-week-old kitten looks like. Now, our 6-week-old kittens, they're going to have all of their deciduous teeth emerged. These are basically, they look just like a little mini cat. Their ears are much more proportionate to their head. They're eating confidently at 6 weeks, using the litter box confidently. Around 7 weeks, their eyes are going to transition to their adult color. So you might notice that young kittens have blue eyes. They're all born with these baby blues, and then eventually their adult eye color starts to transition between 6 and 7 weeks of age. So if you have a kitten who has yellow or green eyes, they're probably, a little older than that 6.5, 7-week mark. A 7-week-old kitten is coordinated and playful. These guys can jump, climb, do all the things that a cat can do. And by 8 weeks, that's typically the age in the United States shelter system that those kittens would be preparing for adoption. So that's the age that most kittens who are in rescue organizations or shelters would be spayed or neutered and placed for adoption. So this all goes by very fast, and every single week there is a different milestone, a different developmental achievement. So let's talk about really making sure that you guys know how to tell what stage they are. We talked about teeth last time. I'm going to quickly go through it again for anyone who missed it. If you have a kitten who has no teeth in their mouth, that kitten is under 3 weeks old, probably a 2-week-old like this one here, or younger. And these kittens are not the kittens we're talking about today. If they don't have teeth in their mouth, they have no business eating meat. They have no business, playing with toys. These guys really just sleep and nurse. This is our 3-week-old kitten. You can see that this kitten has incisors. If you are not sure how old a kitten is, open up their mouth, look inside. You can put your finger in there and feel, do they have teeth on the side? Do they have their canines? Do they have their incisors? Incisors are the first ones to come in at 3 weeks of age. So these kittens are kittens who might be starting to try out the litter box, but they're not eating wet food just yet. This is our 4-week-old kitten. Our 4-week-old kitten is going to have those canine teeth that are poking up out of the sides like little fangs. And these are our teeth. This age is our kitten who we are going to give access to toys. We're going to start playing with them. These kittens are really starting to navigate the world around them. And here's our 5-week-old kitten. So 5 weeks plus, they're going to have the teeth on the side of their mouth, the premolars. And I talk about teeth a lot because it is a really good way to tell their age, but it's also a very important way to tell what stage of development they're in. If a kitten has no teeth on the side of their mouth, they probably are not ready to start eating meat yet. So let's give them some time to, grow those teeth and start eating that wet kitten food once they are ready. So again, we have our 2, 3, 4, and 5-week-old kitten. Okay, so it's important to know what age a kitten is because that's going to tell you what stage of development they're in. And weaning is a really, really, really important moment in any kitten's development. Weaning is the process of going from nursing or bottle feeding to eating solid kitten food. And I want to talk about what that would look like in the wild with a natural situation with a mom and her baby. What that would look like is that around 4 weeks of age, mom would start bringing weakened prey to her babies. So prey that, the babies can practice hunting on. Remember, our 4-week-old kittens are those who have their little canine teeth sticking up. They're becoming much more coordinated. They kind of have that paw-eye coordination coming in, so they're starting to play, interact with objects in the environment. Mom's bringing them weakened prey, and they're actually starting to practice biting prey, starting to practice batting at prey. This is where they're really starting to be interested in hunting behaviors, but they're not eating a whole meal of a prey item right now. They might get a little tiny taste, but most of the nutrition that a 4-week-old kitten will be getting is from their mom, from nursing. So this is a process. It takes a couple weeks. The kitten is improving their hunting. They are improving their biting skills. They're improving their paw-eye coordination, and they're improving the skills of actually consuming solid foods. So between 4 and 7 weeks, they're, likely to still be nursing on mom, but they're slowly making that transition, right? From depending mostly on mom to being able to depend on themselves, eating independently. Now, the reason I talk about what would be natural is because we want to simulate a natural experience for our kittens. And I don't mean bringing weakened prey to our babies, but what I mean is that we should be looking at weaning as a process. We don't force human babies to go from eating, breast milk with their mom to eating a meal of a burger, in one day, right? It's a process. It's a long process. So with kittens, we want to look at it that way too, at least 7-day process. And during that process, the kittens can start trying to eat some of the wet kitten food, but you're also giving them supplementation, whether that's, with mom or with a bottle if they're an orphan. There are a lot of challenges that can happen with weaning. There's really 3 distinct reasons that kittens have a hard time weaning at first, and it's not even that they have a hard time, it's just a process. The first thing is that it's a new skill. To wrap your teeth around food and bite down and chew is a very different skill than suckling on mom or on a bottle, right? Think about the movement of the mouth that it takes to nurse on a bottle. Very different than wrapping your teeth around a piece of wet food and going biting down, right? So these kittens don't have even just the muscle memory and coordination right away to know how to do those things. That's something they have to learn. Second thing is they might not be able to even associate a dish with food. So if you put food down in a dish, they're not used to that being where food is. They might not even be able to identify that that's food or be able to access it from a dish right away. So we want to know that that's also a process. And then finally, internal things that are changes for kittens, right? If you change a diet suddenly, rapidly, or too prematurely, that can cause some GI upset for the kitten. So all of this is to say that it really is a process. They have to learn the new skills of eating, and their body has to acclimate to eating a new protein source, right? So I want to show you this little video, and the reason I want to show you this is because I see this a lot. And I think that if you are a new foster parent, you might not recognize what's going on here. So tell me, do you think that these kittens, if you put this food down for them and you saw them doing this, are these kittens eating well? These kittens, they certainly are making sounds as if they're eating. They're hovering over the dish. Their heads are bobbing around as if they're eating. I think a lot of foster parents might see this and think, this is a kitten who is eating food. But actually what these kittens are doing, if you take a closer look, is they're suckling. These kittens are nursing as if they were with their mom. They're not actually getting any food into their mouth. They're not swallowing any food. They're not getting any nutrition. They're just kind of getting it all over their face, as you can see with baby Splash here. They're just getting it all over their face. And so this is a really important thing to point out, because if you're fostering kittens and you put some food down for them and you notice that they're hovering over the dish and going, you might think that kitten's, growing fine and they're doing a great job at weaning. But actually that kitten could be really, really in trouble. They're hungry. They're not getting the nutrition they need. So this is a big reason why we have to weigh our kittens throughout weaning. Weighing kittens obviously is something we talked about in the last session with bottle feeding. We want to make sure our kittens are meeting that mark. And I know that it's tempting once kittens are a little bigger, a little bulkier, to say they're probably fine, they're probably growing. But let me tell you, During weaning, you have to be weighing your kittens at least once a day, probably a little bit more. So weigh your kittens while you're weaning them. If your kittens are not gaining weight, that is a red flag that that kitten is probably not actually consuming the food in the way that you think they are. If your kitten starts losing weight or is not gaining weight, you want to supplementally feed them with a bottle or with mom. Or just step back altogether. There's no harm in delaying weaning a day or 2 or 3. We want to do this all on the kitten's timeline. So this is a video that I'm going to play for you guys. This video is really all about why it's so important to meet them where they are, as I say. And when I say meat, I don't mean like a hunk of meat. I mean kitten food. So we want to switch to the kitten food on their timeline, not on ours. I keep saying that, but it's something that I know a lot of shelters and rescue workers were sort of pressured to wean the kitten a little bit young, and that's because we can have a hard time finding foster parents who are willing to bottle feed. My perspective on that is that we should always be thinking about the kitten's needs first. So, if we have caregivers who are scared to bottle feed, can we do something about that? Can we change that? Can we teach those people and empower them with the skills they need so that they can do even once or twice a day supplemental bottle feeding? We want to, change our behavior to meet the needs of the kittens, not change the kittens' care to meet our needs, right? So let's watch this little video, and I'll talk a lot in this video about the importance of choosing the right age and the right timeline for weaning your kittens. If you're not careful about how and when you wean your kittens, it can be a really dangerous time for them. They can decline in health, they can lose weight, and worse, they can fall into fatal condition if they're weaned too prematurely. Shelters will often wean kittens very young, and that's because there's a lot of pressure on shelter workers to get them eating independently so they can be cared for in a foster home or in a shelter environment. And the shelter wants to get the kitten out of the door, and totally understandably, but the foster parent can then have a very hard time of getting them to do well. Ultimately, they can end up losing kittens or losing foster parents because they don't have a good experience with these babies. When a kitten's weaned too young, you can see a big decline in their health. Their bodies might not be able to properly absorb the nutrients from the meat. Kittens weaned too young are at risk of emaciation, dehydration, diarrhea, and malabsorption. They also may not be able to effectively eat the food and can choke or undereat, and they can consume an insufficient quantity of food to meet their caloric needs. That's why whenever possible, it's safest to wait until 5 weeks to wean. That's when kittens are biologically capable of handling both the new nutrients and the new method of eating. There are a lot of changes that need to happen to a kitten's body in order for them to be able to wean efficiently. At 3 weeks old, the kittens might have their first teeth, the incisors, but don't let that fool you. The incisors are not for eating meat. The incisors are really for grooming, and that's why at 3 weeks old, you start seeing kittens getting their first tiny teeth and engaging in their first grooming behaviors. It isn't until the kitten is 5 weeks old that they have both their canines and the premolars on the side of the mouth. Those are the teeth that are designed for shredding solids. Even if they do show initial interest in the food, I see a lot of what I call meat nursing, which is where a kitten is actually suckling on the wet food. Oh, are you gonna meat nurse right now? You're doing it. You're stuck. See, this is why you still need a bottle, because you get stuck and you're nursing your meat. You're a meat nurser. But as cute as meat nursing is, it doesn't give a kitten an entire meal. I mean, think about how we wean human babies. You don't just pull them off the breast one day and stick a piece of pizza in their mouth the next. So we need to be able to support the kitten throughout this entire process. Every kitten's going to be different. Out of this litter, Will and Catalina are the two that struggle the most. I have to really sit with them and show them the food and continually try to support them making this transition. But ultimately, you do need to supplementally feed them until they've totally got it. So after Will has done everything he's going to do with his meats, I will give him a bottle to make sure that he has all of his nutritional and caloric needs met. Do you want this? Oh, Will loves his bottle time. Okay, so let's talk about kitten food. What do you look for in a kitten food? How do you know what to feed them? Well, the first thing is make sure that you're feeding them something that says kitten food. So cat food and kitten food are going to be a little bit different. Kittens are growing rapidly. Their eyes are developing, their bones are developing. Everything is developing in these kittens. So they have different nutritional needs than an adult cat would. So we want to focus on making sure that we get them something that says kitten on it. It's going to be higher in protein. It's going to be higher in fat. That's what these little growing kittens need. We also want to always try to start with a wet canned food. And the reason for that is that these little guys, they are not great at drinking water. You'll see in a moment, we'll talk about water. And they're going to rely a lot on their food source for moisture. So wet food is always a really good place to start because they're going to get that moisture content from the wet food. We'll talk about differences between feeding wet food, dry food, all the different options after this. But I've been feeding the Royal Canin mother and baby cat to my kittens for years, and one thing I like about it is that they do make it in a wet form and also in a dry form. So there's something for every kitten for whatever that kitten needs. But make sure that you're getting something that says kitten food on it. And these are some examples of some weaning supplies that you might go for. Your wet canned food. You may want to get a bag of dry food for your kittens. Some kittens do like that, and it might be something that's appropriate for certain kittens. And when you do that, of course, make sure that it's also a kitten food, something that's going to be a size that they can eat and the right nutrition for them. You also want to get a shallow food dish, okay? So not like a giant dog bowl that a Labrador Retriever would eat out of. You want something that is almost more like a plate. These kittens can have a hard time putting their head over a bowl into a dish. So we're going to get something nice and shallow. Maybe you even do just use a plate. Of course, if your kitten has been on formula, you're still going to need a little bit of formula because you want to make sure that your kitten has the option of supplemental feeding if they need it. Bottle, if the kitten was bottle feeding, you might be doing some supplemental feedings. And then definitely these little baby spoons are super helpful. These are just baby spoons for human babies, but it's something that I recommend having on hand. It's helpful for showing kittens the food and helping them access it. Do you free feed kittens or do you meal feed them? This is a question I get a lot. And the answer is, with the age of kittens we're talking about, these kittens who are really in that rapid growth phase, these kittens are under 4 months, they are growing like leaps and bounds every day. We do want them to have free access to food. What I mean by that is we're not restricting them. We're not like measuring out their meals and saying, okay, you get this much and no more. We want to give them the food that they want to eat. So let's give them free access to food. But when I say free access, I don't mean putting food down and walking away. Free access means that they do have access to food when you're not there, but that you still are actually doing meal feeding with them. So you're actually observing that the kitten is truly eating. You're not just putting it down and walking away and letting them suckle at it, right? So we want to make sure that they really are actually consuming it. So typically what I'll do is I will do meal feeding with the wet food. And that means I go in there, I open up the can, I put the food out, they all get excited, they eat the food, and then maybe I'll leave the leftovers in there for them for a little bit if they want to snack on it later, or I'll leave out a bowl of the dry food for them to snack on when I'm not in the room. But you definitely still want to do some meal feeding. So the answer is kind of both. As the kittens get older, once they're in their adoptive home, then the adopters can look more into, meal feeding, true meal feeding as the kittens are, 4 months old and older. But before that, we really do want to make sure they have free access to food. And that's my kitten, Alice. She's one of my current babies who's weaning as we speak. Now, hand feeding is something that I don't see a lot of people do, but it is actually my number one way that I wean kittens. I love hand feeding because you got to think, especially if you're a bottle baby foster parent, kids think that your hands are where food comes from, right? You're bottle feeding the kitten. They know to go over to your hands. So you put food in a bowl and they're like, who needs a bowl? I want your hands, because your hands are where food comes from. So, we want to give them an easy way to access food. What I will do with my kittens is actually scoop a little bit of the food onto my finger, and then I'll show that to them. If they don't understand it right away, I'll put a little bit of it in their mouth, and oftentimes that's enough for them to go, whoa, that tastes good. I want some more of that. Then I'll pick some more up and hold it for them. So they're eating, they're getting the skills of biting. Sometimes it's easier for them actually to learn how to bite when it's a freely floating piece of food than if it's in a dish. So I'll hold the food for them. They'll take some bites of it. They get used to that skill of biting, chewing, and swallowing the food. And then I can put the food down in the dish and show it to them. The one exception here is obviously you would never put food in the mouth of a kitten who cannot swallow or who's asleep or lethargic. Please don't do that. But if your kitten is healthy and you put just a small amount of food in their mouth, it's kind of like spoon feeding a baby. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. This is just the other day. These are my current foster kittens, and you can see in this video some of them are eating out of the dish beautifully, but Nelson is having a little bit of an issue. He didn't understand the bowl. So in this video, you'll see Nelson learn how to transition from the hand to the dish. So what I'm doing here is taking a small amount of the wet kitten food and placing it into Nelson's mouth. And usually that's enough to prompt him to start seeking more of the food. He's excited about the flavor and the texture, but he doesn't really know how to eat this food on his own yet. He's used to being bottle fed, which means he associates my hands with food. So I like to help him by showing him the food in my hands. He is already excited about it. He wants to take some bites, but now I'm going to put my finger right over the dish so that he can start to realize, oh, this food is not coming out of my hands, this food is coming out of the dish. Slowly, I'm going to remove my finger, and he's going to eat right out of the dish. Awesome job, Nelson. Way to go, buddy. So that is often what it looks like. This is honestly, most of my weaning looks a little bit like this. And remember that it varies in every kitten. So you're going to do kitten-led weaning. Some kittens, I'm going to give them one little bite of food. They're going to go, that was interesting. Okay, I'll have my bottle now. And then I give them the bottle. I listen to them. So if they want their bottle after that, that's fine. Maybe the next day they eat a little bit more and then they have their bottle. Maybe the day after that, they eat so much of it that they just want a little tiny bit of bottle, and then after that they don't want the bottle at all. So it's all slow transition. Now I know a lot of you don't want to touch cat food. That's okay. Maybe I'm gross. I'm very used to touching cat food. I don't mind it, but this is where the baby spoons come in handy. Definitely baby spoons are going to help you if you don't want to pick up food. You can still use a baby spoon. They're very soft. You can put the food right on their tongue or hold it out for them. So another option that I see a lot is Slurry. Slurry is a transitional food where you mix the food that they were on, so the Kitten Formula, you mix it with the food that they're going to be on, which is the wet food. So you mix it together, you make kind of this soupy texture, and it can be a little easier for some kittens to consume and to recognize as food because it kind of smells like the formula. It tastes like what they were. It's not my first go-to with kittens. I usually go to hand feeding first, but if a kitten's having trouble with that, then why not try Slurry? Slurry can be provided on a spoon, on your finger. You can make it really, really smooth, almost like a smoothie if you mix it into a smoothie shaker, like a blender bottle, and you make it very, very, very smooth. You can even put that into a bottle if that's how the kitten is willing to accept the food. But like with anything else, you want to continue bottle feeding until they're fully transitioned. Definitely important that with any of these methods, we are, meeting the kitten where they are. So that's Slurry. And let's talk about Kibble now. So Kibble, I know a lot of people say, oh, well, my kittens only want to eat kibble, or I don't want to give my kittens kibble. There's a lot of opinions about kibble. So let me tell you my perspective on kibble. My perspective on kibble is that it is something that works great for some kittens. It's something that I do give access to for my kittens. A lot of adopters are going to feed their kittens kibble or feed their cats kibble. But it is something that we want to go to as a second food for our kittens. So we want to first give them access to the canned wet food. It's going to have more moisture content for them. But dry food is perfectly okay. And I do have some kittens who totally don't want wet food at all. They only want the dry food. And I say, that's great. If that's what you want to eat, then that's great, as long as it is a nutritionally complete kitten food. And the mother and baby cat I really like for the little ones, because you can see it's really, really tiny. It's easy for them to eat. So that is the one that I feed my kittens. And it's nice because, again, it's a very similar diet to the wet food, so they can kind of go back and forth or have whichever one they prefer. So the one thing I will say is, if they are eating only a dry food diet, you really need to make sure they're getting enough moisture content from water. So make sure that they're actually drinking water. If you're not sure that they are, you can actually moisten the dry food. Just put some water over the dry food and let it sit for 2-3 minutes. It'll totally sop up all that water, and then they can eat these like kind of hydrated kibble bits, and that can be a way that they can get their moisture too. This is another funny one. This is not something I really do ever, except for kittens who are like a mystery to me when they're weaning. This is Penelope and Petunia, and when they came to me, they didn't want to eat on a bottle. They had been with their mom, I think, outside, so they weren't taking to the bottle, but they didn't want wet food, and they wouldn't eat kibble. So what I got them to eat was this cereal, which is just Kitten Formula over dry food. And that's sort of like the dry food version of a slurry, and they just loved it. And that can be an option too. You know, the kibble will absorb some of the formula. They're getting all of the nutrients from the formula and from the kibble, so it's a nice transitional food for them. If you do this, I'll just say, please be cautious about leaving it out too long. We don't want to leave the formula out to spoil. So, you know, you can rehydrate the kibble with your formula and feed it to them, but then, you know, once they're done eating it, pick it up so that it doesn't spoil. Now, a big question I get about weaning is like, my kittens are super duper messy. How do I handle how messy they are? And the first thing that I'll say is, if your kittens are getting like saturated head to toe in wet food, something is going on beyond just that kitten being a little bit messy. Typically, the kittens that I see who are like really saturated in food, their whole body's going into the dish, they have food on their entire head. A lot of the time, these kittens, they're being weaned too young. So if they're weaned too young, or if they're not on a regular enough schedule, you have to think these kittens are very hungry. They're eager to eat. They're frantic looking for food. So they might not have the wherewithal to eat out of a dish yet, but they're frantic. They're trying to scramble to find the food, and they can get very, very messy. Now, I will say weaning is messy for every kitten to a certain extent. This is kind of what a weaning kitten looks like, with the little milk goatee, the wet food goatee. But if they're getting very, 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 very messy, I ask that you do take a look at them. Make sure they really are the right age. Put your finger in the side of the mouth. Do they have premolars yet? If not, please step them back to formula or being with mom. And then, you know, make sure that they are being weighed and supplemented, because we don't want our kittens to be frantic about food. That's not good for them, you know, physically, but it's also not good for them emotionally. We want our kittens to grow up in a secure environment where they feel like they have everything that they need. They feel loved. They feel cared for. They feel like they are not going to go hungry, right? So please don't let your kittens be such eager eaters. We want to do everything on a timeline that's comfortable for them. And if your kittens are messy, which, like I said, some of them are, you do need to clean their face. Clean their face after they eat, because if you don't, or even if you do, but your kitten is covering their face in food all the time, they can develop dermatitis around their face. So the kitten can actually, have a lot of irritation, fur loss on their face where that food is being left behind. It happens to the best of us. Some kittens are very messy. This is a kitten I had in 2017, and he just would cover his face in food, and it got very irritated. But what I would recommend to anybody to do who has this situation is, first of all, try to do wet food on a meal schedule so that you can actually clean them up afterwards. Maybe don't give them free access to the wet food when you're not there supervising, because honestly, they're gonna keep putting their face in it. It's gonna be harder to keep them clean. Use a baby wipe or, a warm, wet washcloth to fully clean the face afterwards. And, if the kitten does develop dermatitis, if they do develop, fur loss and irritation, then please do talk to a veterinarian about getting some kind of ointment for them. We want their skin to heal, and we don't want them to go to adoption looking like they have a weird little muzzle on them. So, be cautious with this. Some kittens, if they just will not stop, suckling on the wet food like that, it might be more appropriate for them to be on a dry food diet as long as they are able to access the water. But every single kitten's an individual, and I hope I've made that clear here. Every kitten is going to wean differently. They're all going to have different preferences. The important thing is that we're really monitoring and tuning into that specific kitten's needs and meeting that specific kitten's needs because they're going to tell us what it is they want and what it is they need. But just remember, there's no rush, okay? I always say they have the rest of their life to eat cat food, right? These kittens have the rest of their life to eat solids. So this is a really special and very vulnerable time in a kitten's life. Weaning is definitely a period where if you get it wrong, these kittens can have health problems. They can have a lot of health issues related to premature weaning or too fast weaning. So don't put the pressure on them. Let's give them supplementation. Let them lead the way. And honestly, if you have a kitten and you're like, I don't have the time in my schedule to be a bottle feeder, at least do it twice a day. When you wake up and before you go to bed, just give them that extra little bit in a bottle. That's certainly something that anybody has time for. Anybody can learn how to do. So please, make sure that you're giving these kittens what they need. So with water, let's talk about that. Water is something that can be introduced around 4 to 5 weeks of age. They'll start, going over to the water dish and pecking at it and putting their nose in it and going, what is this mysterious liquid? You want your water dish to be shallow. Again, no deep dishes for a Labrador Retriever. These kittens could fall into that, and that could be very dangerous for them. So something very shallow where they can't submerge their body or head. You can start giving them access to water when they start weaning. And remember, when they're nursing or when they are on a bottle, they're getting all of the fluid content from their food. So they do not need access to water. But as they're weaning, they do need access to fresh water at all times. I want to show you what it looks like when a kitten is first drinking water because they almost all have the same reaction, and this is normal. So this is what you would expect to see with a kitten who's first drinking water. They kind of put their nose into it and go, pff, pff. Here's one of my foster kittens pecking at her water. So cute. That's Pepita, one of my recent foster kittens. And you can see she actually got the hang of it quite quickly. They dunk their nose into it, and then they realize that that's actually a line of water that they can start to drink from. Most kittens understand water right away after a few pecks on their nose. But if they're not understanding water, again, you can add some water to their food. Even if they're eating wet food, you can add a little splash of water into that and mix it in there if you're worried about them not getting enough fluids. So let's transition a little bit to talking about litter. So kittens are going to be, getting stimulated by their mom or by you if you're doing surrogate care for an orphan. And these kittens are, around 3 weeks of age, they might start going to the bathroom, on their blanket or, in their bed where they're sleeping. And that's a good sign that they're ready for a litter box. So around between 3 and 4 weeks of age. You wouldn't expect a kitten to be fully litter trained at that age, but you would expect them to start looking for somewhere to go. So the important thing is that we give them an appropriate litter box that they're going to easily understand and access. So here's 4 examples of appropriate litter boxes. The first one on the top left is actually a box for senior cats. If you look up, senior cat litter box, you'll see that there's all of these very shallow litter boxes that are designed for a senior cat to be able to easily walk into. And I actually love those for foster kittens because they're shallow enough that a kitten can get into them. They are quite large, so it's not really what you need for a single kitten who's learning. But if you have a big group of 6 kittens who are all learning how to use the litter box, then definitely a senior box is a great way to go. There's also the blue box, which is our, just standard litter training box. This is something you can get at any pet supply store. And that's appropriate for a kitten who's learning. Honestly, I love the aluminum trays. You can buy these like aluminum trays that are for, use in the kitchen, but they come in packs of like 25. So you use them and then you toss them. And that's nice because kittens can be messy in the litter box. And, it's nice to be able to have something that you can just discard. So that might be an option for you if you are doing a lot of kitten fostering. And then finally, we talked a lot about wet kitten food. The wet kitten food comes in these little cardboard trays. And this is a great opportunity to upcycle your cardboard trays. I never throw my cardboard trays away. As I'm going through my food, I take the cardboard tray that the food comes in and I put it to the side. And then when my kittens are training, I'll actually pull those boxes and put litter in them. And that's a perfect first box because it's super duper shallow. We want the kitten to be able to easily access the litter box. So here's what a not appropriate litter box looks like for a kitten. If a litter box has a big step that you have to walk up and you got to turn around a corner and go through a flap and, fight a dragon just to get into the litter box, that's not an appropriate box for a little kitten who's learning, right? Nothing that they have to hop into from above or climb a big thing to get into, and certainly no automatic litter boxes. These are not appropriate for kittens who are learning how to use a litter box. And the reason is that if it's really hard to access the litter box, they're not going to go in it. They're just going to go somewhere else. And if they start going somewhere else, they're going to learn that that's the appropriate thing to do. And it's going to be a lot harder for them to unlearn that behavior. So we want to give them a good option from the beginning. I'll also caution you that most of the automatic litter boxes, like the one you see in the bottom right, they're actually weighted for 5 pounds typically, which means that they actually can cycle with the kitten inside of it if the kitten is under 5 pounds. So please, if you have automatic litter boxes, be really careful about them. We have some in our home, but I actually turn them off if the kittens are anywhere in proximity to them because I don't want the kitten to go in there and end up on a spin cycle. So be cautious about that. Really, you want to just start with something super duper simple when you're litter training your kittens. So let's watch a little video about the transition from being stimulated to go to the bathroom to accessing a litter box for the first time. Here's a little video about that. If you're raising baby kittens, you know that they don't go to the bathroom on their own for the first few weeks of life. From 0 to 3 weeks of age, kittens will be stimulated to go to the bathroom by their mother licking them. If you're caring for an orphan kitten who doesn't have their mother, you'll have to help them go to the bathroom by stimulating them with a soft tissue. Once the kittens hit 3 weeks old, their bodies start being able to gradually go to the bathroom independently. So you might start to notice that they pooped or peed in their bedding between feedings. That's a perfect time to start introducing the litter box. To litter train kittens, you're obviously going to need a litter box and litter. For your box, a small, cheap, shallow box is where you want to start with these little guys. Nothing covered, nothing too tall, nothing with a door or steps or anything like that. In fact, when they're first learning, I just use these cardboard trays as their first training boxes. The cardboard trays that hold canned food are perfect for litter training kittens. I love using these because they're so shallow the kitten can just walk right into it. And once they get really gross, you can just toss them in the trash. This means a clean box for the kittens and less hassle for you. Remember that kittens navigate the world just like human babies, with their mouths. Highly fragrant litters can be bad for tiny kittens if ingested, and clumping clay litter is definitely a no-no, since it clumps up when it touches liquid. Instead, I recommend using something like an unscented paper-based litter, or even a corn or wheat-based litter until they're 8 weeks old and confidently exploring the box without munching on it. Once the kittens are closer to 6 or 7 weeks old, I move them into a plastic litter box that is more like what they'll have as an adult. You still want this box to be shallow and lidless, but it can be a bit bigger and more sturdy than those cardboard trays. The litter box should always be the first thing you show a kitten anytime they go to a new home or a new room. Put out as many boxes as you need, depending on the size of the space. For instance, a little baby in a playpen only needs 1. But if you have a rambunctious 8-week-old kitten running around your house, you should ideally have at least 1 box in each room while they're still learning. Kittens will typically be drawn to go to the bathroom in a corner, so I recommend starting by putting a box in 1 to 2 corners of the room. Once the kitten starts using the box, congratulate them. Kittens do well with positive reinforcement. You can use an encouraging voice and give them some extra pets while they're exiting the box. You also want to make sure they don't find alternate places to go to the bathroom. Maybe you have a pile of laundry in the corner of your room, or some blankets all bunched up in their playpen. This might be okay to you, but to a kitten, they might think this provides a good place to cover their waste. When kittens are litter training, it's so important to keep a clean box so that they're incentivized to use it. This is where a lot of people mess up. They don't clean the box enough. This is a big pet peeve of mine because it's so unfair to the animal. And it gives people the impression that cats are smelly animals. Cats aren't smelly animals. You're a smelly animal if you don't clean the litter box. One way to think of it is whenever you feed them, you should also check out the box and see if it needs a scoop. If it does, it's easy to just toss that small amount into a toilet, a trash bag, or a smell-proof pail.
Okay. So, let's go through some of the let's go through some of the do's and don'ts of litter training kittens. Covered a lot in that video, but the basic things that you need to know are, first, make sure it's a litter box that the kitten really can access easily. It's shallow, it's uncovered, they can easily find it. You also want to use your kitten safe litter, so something that is fragrance free. Typically you're going to want to go for something that's non-clumping. And you want to clean the litter box at least once a day, if not more frequently. Highly recommend, just getting a litter pail that you can scoop the litter every time you notice that it's dirty and put it in there. These kittens really want access to a clean box. The big thing about litter training is you want to eliminate other options, because everything with kittens is, giving them the right head start so that they don't develop the wrong behavior to begin with. It's a lot harder to undo a behavior than it is to just set them in the right direction to begin with. So remember that kittens, they're just looking for somewhere to bury their waste. They're very clean animals, and they are just looking for somewhere where they can cover up. So if there's a pile of clothes or a pile of bedding, they might go to the bathroom there because they think, oh, I can cover this up. So let's eliminate those options. Give them, just a smooth pile of bedding, no access to anything else where they can cover their waste. Put the box in a corner, make sure that, they have access to it freely if they're roaming all over the house. If this is a newly adopted kitten, I would even maybe send your kittens to their adoptive homes with a couple of those cardboard trays so that they have extra litter boxes they can put around just while the kitten's learning to navigate their space. And of course, know that these things take time. A lot of your kittens are going to think that the litter box is a bed or a source of food. This is Blossom laying in her litter box, and all that I can say about that is be patient with them. They don't know what it is. And in this picture, you can see, she thinks this is a cozy bed. I would say this is probably a kitten who just doesn't want like a soft blanket to lay on. She wants something harder to lay on. So maybe I'd give her some corrugated cardboard or something that she can lay on instead. But we'll just remove her out of there, and make sure that she learns what that area really is for. Positive reinforcement only. We're never yelling at our kittens. We're never going, look at what you did, and putting their nose in their poop or something. No way. We just want to positively reinforce, even if they are not getting it perfectly, but they're trying. You can see here, Zuma is in the box. She's doing great. Will, the little orange kitten, has one paw in the box, but is going outside of it. He's trying. Bless his heart, he's trying. We're going to say, oh, good job, Will. You really did a good job. You really tried. And maybe I'll pick him up while he's in the middle of going and, move him 2 inches into the box and then, give him some pets and tell him he did a really good job. But honestly, most kittens, by the time they are 5 weeks old, they are doing pretty great at litter training, but they're all on their own schedule. So really, positive reinforcement, just keep trying to do the right thing. And most of these guys do beautifully with litter. We also have to remember that our kittens are micropanthers. Sometimes I hear people say, well, I, love kittens because they're cuddly and they lay in bed with me. No, that's one part of being a kitten. But the main part of being a kitten is you're a little tiny micropanther with all these little instincts sparking in your brain telling you, I have to pounce, I have to bite, I have to climb and scratch and play. And, if you don't want to be working with an animal like that, then there are plenty of other species you can work with. There's a huge need for foster care for even guinea pigs and rabbits. And I'm not being sarcastic. There really is. If you don't want to work with a micropanther, definitely, contact your local critter rescues and foster some guinea pigs or bunnies. But if you are working with kittens, you have to know that biting, scratching, pouncing, clawing, climbing, all of these are normal behaviors, and they're behaviors that we actually want to encourage because we have to respect the species that we are raising, right? These guys are gonna have all of those behaviors, so let's know that ahead of time, and let's do the right thing ahead of time. So let's appreciate their natural behaviors. I love that these kittens are who they are because that's what makes them so special. Now, we want to establish good behaviors from the beginning. So knowing that these are natural behaviors, you can get 2 steps ahead of them. So you're actually kind of guiding them in a positive direction with those behaviors. You know that the kitten's going to want to climb something. So instead of waiting until they climb on top of your refrigerator or until they climb on top of your bedpost, you give them something that they can climb so that they don't ever establish those behaviors that you don't want. So we want to take the kitten's lead. They're telling you what they need, so give them what they need, but give it to them in a way that, meets the kitten's needs and your needs. And remember that, we're preparing these little guys for their forever home. So even if it doesn't bother you that the kitten climbs, up your pants and up to the top of your head, it might bother the adopter when that cat is 10 pounds and trying to do that. So we really want to try to establish good behaviors from the get-go. These kittens are going to have behaviors that carry on into their futures. So we have a really cool opportunity to give them a good jump start on having behaviors that meet everybody's needs. The biggest principle here is that for every no that you give a kitten, or a cat for that matter, you want to give them an even better yes. So you're never just saying, don't bite or don't claw. You're saying, bite this, claw this, and whatever the this is better be way better than the first thing that they wanted to claw or bite. Does that make sense? We want to give these kittens other options. So we're never trying to suppress an instinct, because guess what? You're going to fail at suppressing an instinct. These kittens have instincts. They are cats. They're going to have these instincts. So instead of suppressing, we're going to give avenues for expressing those behaviors in a positive way, in a way that, adopters are not going to be upset about. They're going to actually appreciate. So if the kitten chooses the wrong target, again, we're never going to punish them. We're not going to, yell at them or get angry, because they're babies. They don't know what's going on. We instead just want to appropriately direct them to the right target. So let me show you what I mean by that. If a kitten is biting your hand, you don't just say, don't bite. Oh my gosh, why are kittens so mouthy? Well, kittens are so mouthy because guess what? They're a predator species, and they have these new teeth that they're trying out. Their little brain is telling them, I gotta hunt something. I gotta find a moving object to bite down on. That's what their brains are telling them. So knowing that, we can say, okay, this kitten wants something to attack. They want something to bite down on. They want to practice looking for a moving object and then pouncing on it. So let's give them something like a wand toy. A wand toy, you can move through the air. They get to practice looking at it, sizing it up, pouncing on it, biting down, and that kitten now is satiated even more than they were by biting your hands, and now your hands are not going to get bit. Same principle applies here. A lot of kittens, they want something to climb, and they have those awesome claws that make them like Velcro. They can just climb right up anything they want to climb, right? So your pants might be an attractive looking cat tree to them, but let's give them a cat tree. Let's give them a scratching post. Let's give them things that they can climb. So if they want to practice that behavior, we're not saying don't do that. I mean, that's horrible. We don't want to suppress a natural instinct. We just want to give them what they need so that they don't have to, put little claw marks all up and down your legs. Speaking of claws, I want to show you a quick video about trimming kitten claws because I know that a lot of people have questions about claws. My perspective is that, and this is not even just my perspective, this is just true, kittens' claws are a necessary and important part of their body. We never want to be doing something like mutilating the kitten and removing claws, like actually declawing them surgically. That is very unethical thing to do to a baby. We don't want to do that. But we do want to trim their claws, and it's very different. I have to explain it sometimes to people because they don't understand what the trim is. So declawing is a surgical procedure that mutilates the kitten, and it actually removes part of their paw, the last digit. We don't want to do that to our kittens. They need their claws. Their claws are really important for stretching, climbing, self-defense, all of these various things. But we do want to trim their claws. So trimming their claws is like trimming your nails. If you look at your own nails, you have a pink part of your nail and you have a white part of your nail. Same thing applies for your kittens. So the kittens have a white part of their nail, and that is just, that's the dead part of their nail that can come right off. So we want to trim only the white part, not the pink part. So here's a little video about trimming kitten claws. How do those claws feel on your back?
Terrible.
Look at those claws. So this little lady gets adopted tomorrow, and I am going to give her a spa day before she goes. So here's how you can see their claws. You just push down on their little toe bean and whoop, it emerges. Her claw is retractable, so there it's inside, there it's out. So if you see the pink, that's her actual tissue. You don't ever want to trim that pink. That is painful to them. Same thing with like human nails. You don't want to trim the pink part. You want to trim the white part. You're being a good girl. Spa day.
She really is.
It's also good to do this with them when they're little so that they get used to it. Snip. That's it. She's still going to climb, but not as painfully. They need their claws, really important part of their physiology. We just don't want them to stab us by running up our backs with their sharp claws, not naming any names. Okay, so that was Kodiak, and she was getting her little claws trimmed, and that's something that I would recommend doing starting around 4 weeks. It's great. You can actually touch the kitten's paws and get them really used to the sensation of having their paws touched and their claws trimmed. That's going to help the adopter in the future when they have a kitten who already is comfortable having that done. I don't know if there's any Jackson Galaxy fans watching this, but he's a great cat behavior expert and a good friend of mine, as well as Dr. Michael Delgado. She's a friend and like a hero to me. They both do great cat behavior work, and the two of them together wrote a book called Total Cat Mojo. I highly recommend that book. If you haven't read it, it's wonderful information about mostly adult cats and behavior. But when I read that book, I found it very eye-opening even for me as a kitten rescuer, because it really got me thinking about how my role is to give them that proper head start so they don't have to unlearn negative behaviors. They just have the right head start to begin with. And the big principle that they talk about in Total Cat Mojo is the rhythm of a happy, healthy cat. And all these cats, they have this natural rhythm in the wild. The natural rhythm would be hunt, catch, kill, eat, groom, sleep. And this is just the cycle that a cat goes on throughout the day if they are really a whole cat who feels, positive, happy. This is a psychologically whole cat and a happy, healthy cat. So the same thing applies to being an indoor cat in our homes, and it also applies to kittens. Of course, the hunting is simulated with playtime. So the hunt is, they are looking for a moving object. They're looking around, where is it? And then they find it. And that moving object is going to be a toy. Then what happens? They pounce, they catch it. Just like in this photo here with Pepita, she catches her toy. And in that moment, she feels very psychologically enriched. She feels whole. She feels confident, like she did a good job. She caught her prey. And then what happens? Well, the next thing that happens happens is the kill. And of course, simulated in an indoor environment, the kill is really going to be they're going to bite it, they're going to bunny kick with their back legs, they're going to toss it around and catch it again and chomp down on it. That's the kill part. And that's really, really an important thing for them. We want them to know that you're a good hunter, dude. You did a great job. You caught it. You ripped it up with your ferocious teeth. And then the next thing is eat. Now, they're not going to eat their toy, but we can give them a treat afterwards, or we can play with them before mealtime so they feel like they have that happy, healthy cycle of hunt, catch, kill, and then having that reward of something to eat afterwards. After they eat, they groom themselves, they go to sleep, and then, wake up and hunt again. So this is a really good rhythm that we want to get our cats on, and we can do that as babies, as kittens, by starting at 4 weeks, giving them moving objects to hunt. And I'm going to show you a little video about that here so you can see what that looks like in practice. It's important to know that cats are a predator species. So if you're raising a kitten, you're literally raising a micropanther. These guys have a biological instinct to stalk, hunt, and kill their prey, just like a lion or a tiger does. If we love cats, we have to love them fully, not just when they're sleepy and cuddly, but also when they're ferocious and playful. These are the behavioral characteristics that make them who they really are. To be psychologically whole, they have to experience the hunt, which does include biting. So how can we simulate hunting in our homes without becoming a target of their tiny teeth? This right here is really the key to getting kittens not to bite you. We have to be getting them into a healthy hunting rhythm. We have to be playing with our kittens actively multiple times a day with toys that move. If you just throw a bunch of toys into a room and expect the kitten to be satisfied, that's just not going to work. Because if we never make toys move for them, then the only thing they ever see moving is your hands and feet. It's also important that we're not encouraging kittens to view our hands as prey. I know how tempting it is to twinkle your fingers at them or tickle their bellies, but this does teach them to view your hands as a chew toy. It's important that anytime you give a kitten a no, you give them an equal and more attractive yes. For instance, you can't just say to a kitten, don't bite anything. Instead of saying don't bite, you should be saying do bite, but bite this instead. It's important not to tease or taunt your kittens with toys. Giving them a little bit of a challenge is nice, but if you never let them actually catch it, then they don't get the satisfaction of the kill. Instead, you want to give them a little bit of a challenge and then let them catch the toy. Good job, Kabu. So I like to give my kittens the thrill of the hunt, let them catch the toy and really kick it, bite it, and show it who's boss. Then after a good play session, I feed them. This is like the reward for being a good hunter. They feel so satisfied and proud. Then they can groom themselves, go to sleep, and wait for the next moment of excitement when the hunt begins again. So you can see these kittens are definitely psychologically whole kittens. They are, they have something to really think about. And that is an awesome thing that we want to give our kittens. We want to give them access to playtime so that they are really, really engaged and enriched. So some quick do's and don'ts, use plush toys, wand toys, crinkle balls, tunnels, any enrichment items that you can to play. You don't want to use something like your hands. I know it's tempting to do this, but please don't do that. It's a lot cuter when it's a little baby who barely has any teeth. It's a lot less cute once that kitten is a 10-pound cat. So let's not get them started with that. Actively play with them. Make the toys actually move. People might think that, just giving a toy to a kitten is enough, but if the toy's not moving, then, that's not enriching enough for them. So, there are toys you can get that do move on a motor, but you guys, this is like one of the most fun parts of fostering is actually getting to play with your kittens. So please do play with them a couple times throughout the day at least. Let the kitten actually catch the toy. So if you just kind of dangle something around, or if you use something they can't catch, like a laser pointer, that's really sad because they never get to actually catch the laser. And maybe that's funny for you, but for them, it does not develop their confidence very well. So I would use lasers with a limited amount. I would definitely focus on tangible toys they can actually catch and, kick and bite and all of that. Redirect any, negative behaviors like biting on your hands towards an appropriate target. Don't say, no, ow, just go, okay, give them the other object and let them kick and bite that instead. And of course, give them a treat after their playtime. This is what I'm going for with my kittens. I want to see kittens who are so engaged and enriched and excited that their eyes look like this. I love this picture of Badger because you can see he's looking at this toy here and going, oh my gosh, this is the biggest day of my life. I'm going to hunt that toy. And this is really what I go for with my kittens. You have to think life is about more than just eating and going to the bathroom and sleeping and going to the doctor, right? Life is about all of the interesting things that you have to think about throughout the day. Activities that you might do, fun things that you look forward to. These kittens, for them, it's all about playing and hunting. So, this is one of my recent kittens. He's in like pine cone mode, defensive pine cone mode. And I love this because this is a kitten who is really having a moment to, engage mentally, to size something up. He's really got something to think about here. This is another one of our recent kittens, Jimmy, and he's got his little rainbow rope there. And I just love this. This is a kitten who, he was a real mess when he came here. He was very ill. He got better. And then to see him tug on a rope and growl and all of that is just wonderful. So, please do give your kittens this actual interactive play because it's a really important part of their development. Just like playing is important, creating environmental enrichment is also important. Kittens need lots of things in their environment to help them practice their natural skills and their natural instincts, things like climbing, scratching, hunting, burrowing, lounging, even exploring different stimuli, like different smells in the environment, different new things that they might see or encounter. These are all skills that we want to give our kittens so that they can be confident and they can know how to navigate the world around them. So please make sure that any enrichment or toys are kitten safe. But there's a lot of things you can do for cheap or even free. These little tunnels cost like less than $10, and kittens love having a little place that they can burrow into a tunnel because then they can also jump out of it at each other. This is a wonderful enrichment item. You can also get corrugated cardboard or scratch posts for your kittens. Definitely you want to give them something they can scratch on. Otherwise, like I said, they might reach up and try to scratch on your pant leg because that's a natural behavior that they want to express. So give them some kind of scratcher from the beginning, and you can get very, very cheap or like disposable or reusable cardboard scratchers, or there's lots of different types of scratchers. I have some recommendations on my website, but I like this one a lot. You can even give them things like a bowl on the floor. I mean, this is just like a fruit bowl that I had, but you put it on the floor and suddenly it's a cat bed. It's a place that they can spin in circles. It's a place they can fight over who gets to lay in it. Any kind of new item, don't leave your kittens with the same thing all day. You want to switch it up, One day they don't have a bowl. The next day they have a bowl. They're like, what is a bowl? This is cool. They have something to explore, something to think about. This is just the packing paper that comes in your delivery boxes, and I love packing paper for kittens. It's like my number one favorite thing because when we get a delivery that has packing paper, I go, okay, this is going to be enrichment for the day. You can see Jez is super engaged. His pupils are enlarged. He's low to the ground. His butt's probably wiggling in this photo. You can really see that this kitten is excited. And packing paper, it's awesome because you can crinkle it up. It makes an interesting sound. It's something that they can hide under. It's something they can pounce on, and it's, safe for them. So I really like things like that. But get creative. You can do so many different forms of enrichment with your kittens, even if it's just like showing them a new smell or showing them something they've never seen before. Kittens, they only have the environment that we create for them. So let's create a really interesting environment and switch it up. Remember that our trash is their treasure. You don't have to break the bank to do enrichment with kittens. Even things like, the toilet paper rolls or paper towel rolls. You can take those tubes and you could put some treats in there and close the end of it off, like push it in, and that's a nice little enrichment toy. But there's all sorts of things you can do. In this video, this is just a very cute short video of kittens exploring different things that are literally usually something you would just toss in the trash. Check it out. Kittens are pretty silly. Never a dull moment, I'll say that much. Okay, I do have a lot of kitten toy safety precautions in my book. This is taken directly out of Tiny But Mighty. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do just want to address a couple of them. The first one is ropes and wands. The toys that are like a wand with a string on the end of it, and typically a toy that you manually move. I'm a big fan of these for kittens, but the important thing to know about that is that you do need to have those be supervision only toys. So that means that you actively play with the kitten with that toy, but once you're done playing, I recommend taking that rope and wrapping it around the wand so that it's no longer a loose hanging string, and then put it up somewhere high that the kitten cannot access. The reason being, kittens are, very mischievous, and they can really get themselves entangled in that string. If you leave that access open to them and they can play with it without you supervising, they could very easily wrap that around a neck or around a limb. So let's keep our kittens safe. Those ropes and wand toys, they really don't do anything for them if you're not interacting with them anyway. So make that your special toy for when you are there supervising and interacting with them. Another one I want to call to attention is just yarn and string. Cartoons did not do a good job of teaching us about playing with cats. I know a lot of us watched morning cartoons with cats that had yarn or string, but that is not a safe toy for a kitten. Please don't give them that. You need to understand that kittens and cats, they have barbed tongues, which means that they actually have their tongues have these little barbs that move backwards. And so that's why when they lick you, it feels very rough. But when they're swallowing something, if they get string in their mouth, it's very hard for them to pull that back up. It's a lot easier for them to keep swallowing. So something like yarn or string, if they do start getting it caught on their tongue, they're likely to continually swallow it rather than to kick that back up and out of their throat. So with that, obviously, I don't have to tell you how dangerous that could be if they swallow a bunch of yarn. So please don't give them any access to that. And if you sew and you have string or yarn laying around because you knit, just please keep that up. They will be interested in it, but just because they're interested in it does not mean that it's safe for them. Another thing I want to call to your attention is peek and play toys. These are the toys that have, typically it's like a little box with some holes in it that the cat is meant to put their paw through and bat around at a toy. And these can be used with supervision, but I'll caution you that I have seen kittens get injured on them. And the reason is that those holes are usually the size for an adult cat to put their paw through, but that hole can very easily fit a kitten's head or, a part of the kitten's body where they can get injured. They're not really designed for little tiny limbs and for little tiny heads. So please be really careful with peek and play toys. I just don't do them with my kittens because it's not worth it to me to risk a kitten getting their head stuck in a toy. And then the last one I want to call to your attention is just DIY toys. big fan here of homemade toys. I think it's awesome. Repurposing, reusing, recycling, all of the things that you have at home, something like a fabric scrap that you can tie into a knot and suddenly it becomes an interesting little kicker for your cat, or, a paper bag. But please be careful. Things like a paper bag, you got to take the handles off of that because that could become a hazard for the kitten. Or, if you create a little toy for them at home, you need to be thinking about things like, does this have a small object that the kitten could choke on? Is there anything about this that's hazardous to the kitten? Just be cautious. And if you're ever not sure, just err on the side of caution, please. Okay, so we could talk about that all day, but there's more information on it in my book. This is a toy that I really love for my kittens. That's baby Ray, and he's playing with it. But actually, you see this arrow is pointing. There's a hole down the center of that, which is not a problem for an adult cat, but is definitely a problem for a kitten. So if you have toys like this where there's like a hole, a lot of the time scratch posts even have like a hole down the center of them. Just be thinking worst case scenario all the times, because if a kitten can get into something, they probably will. So I will take a little small receiving blanket and I'll wrap it up and I'll stick it into that hole so that if he climbs on top of that, he's not going to fall through that hole. He's not going to get his head stuck in there. So just be careful. There are modifications that you can make to toys to make them more kitten safe. And of course, the best enrichment for a kitten is a friend. Having a friend is a really, really beautiful thing for a kitten. And, if you think that cats are solitary animals, that's totally not true. Some cats, if they don't grow up around other animals or if they haven't seen another cat in a long time, they might be not interested in being friends with other cats. But pretty much across the board, every kitten benefits from being around other kittens. And so if you are thinking about adopting, I highly recommend considering adopting in pairs. Adopting a pair is such an awesome thing to do because those cats, they teach each other things, they keep each other occupied, they keep each other company. Even if you're adopting a kitten and you have another cat at home, when you adopt a pair, the pair keeps each other company, and then the adult cat can kind of watch and decide, do I want to participate or do I not want to participate? They decrease aggressive behaviors in one another because they can take out a lot of that on each other, and they actually teach each other good boundaries. So that's awesome. It really does ease the transition into a home. I do highly recommend adopters consider pairs of kittens. I always say that, 2 kittens are a whole kitten. 1 kitten is just half a kitten. So I really like doing pairs. However, I want to caution you that, obviously, pairs of litter mates, they can grow up together. But if you have kittens from different litters, if you have a singleton kitten, you do need to have a quarantine period of at least 2 weeks before you can introduce kittens from different litters. And I'm going to talk all about that next week. So if you're interested in that subject, join me on May 2nd in my Keeping Kittens Healthy webinar. I'm going to be talking a lot about quarantine and how to keep everybody healthy. And that includes not introducing kittens from other litters without a little period of monitoring. You guys know what that's like right now. A lot of us are doing social distancing. It's like social distancing for kittens. Family groups can stay together, but we want to do a little period of monitoring before we have kittens who are not related interacting with each other. But it's an awesome thing you can do. You can combine litters once everybody's been monitored and healthy, and we'll talk about that next week. Okay, so let's move on and switch gears a little bit here. We talked a lot about weaning, we talked about litter training, we talked about behavior, and hopefully by this point we have a weaned kitten who is, using the litter box perfectly, and they're playing, and they're a happy, healthy, playful kitten. And now we want to start thinking about adoption. Our kittens are really getting all the skills they need to be independent, and once a kitten's independent, we want them to go to their forever home. So what do we need to do to prepare for that? Well, we need to do a couple things. We need to learn how to advertise them for adoption. So that involves, learning how to take some photos of them. This photo right here is actually one of my kittens. took my phone and took a bunch of selfies on it on the floor, and I didn't find it until later on, and it just cracked me up. So, you know, these little ones are really like tiny teenagers taking a bunch of selfies, but that's not what I would recommend for, you know, your photos for adoption, although that is pretty funny. So we'll learn a little bit about kitten photography, writing their bios, and then we'll talk about, you know, how to actually advertise them, look for a home, interview somebody, and complete an adoption. So let's watch this little video first about capturing the perfect photo of your foster kitten. And, you know, you can use a DSLR or a dedicated camera for this, but most of us are just taking photos on our cell phones. So that's what this video is about, is taking a photo on a phone. Don't use the flash on this thing. It's super unflattering. You want to instead choose a natural light source, something like a window, and I'll actually place the kitten right next to the window so that the light can beautifully illuminate her face. Natural lighting is going to bring out all of the beautiful texture and details on the kitten and make you feel like you're really looking right at her. So now that you have your kitten next to a natural light source, you're going to choose a toy to get her attention. That should do it. Okay, so I've got my toy, and clearly she's very interested in that. And then my third piece of advice is to shoot a photo at eye level. Oh, Flower's interested in it too. I'm taking a picture of her at eye level. So let's just get a couple options here. Oh my gosh, Peppermint, you're so cute. With the window right in front of her, it's gonna light up her eyes beautifully. Peppermint has all of these funny whiskers that I want to make sure I'm capturing in detail. Okay, so those were just a couple of tips, and I'll reiterate some of them here. Natural light is definitely your friend. So if you're taking a picture of a kitten at night and it's kind of dark and you just have one lamp in the room, you're going to end up with a blurry photo that is not flattering. It doesn't catch the beautiful color of their eyes. It doesn't catch the detail in their fur. So natural light is definitely the way to go. Let's get that curtain open. Let's plop them right near a window. You can see here, this is Clem, one of my recent foster kittens, and that's just a cell phone photo, but you can see so many details, every little, you know, color in his eye and the detail of his tongue. Light also allows us to get a crisper photo, so we can capture those split-second things that happen, like a tongue sticking out to the side. Oh, that's a really cute thing, and you know, you can't capture that if you don't have ample light. So make sure you have enough light. Take a photo at the kitten's eye level. So if you're taking a photo from overhead of a kitten that's down at your feet, you're just gonna end up with the top of their head or kind of a strange angle. Getting down on the floor with them or putting them up on a table that's near your eye level is going to help people really see the kitten face to face. And that's what we want potential adopters to see, is, you know, be face to face with this animal, just like your peers, you're looking right at them. We also want to use noise and toys, two great ways of getting a kitten's attention. So it's not that kittens just naturally pose for the camera. Anytime you see a picture like this with a kitten who is looking right at the camera, you can bet that right behind the camera there's probably some kind of noise happening. I'll give you an example. Here's my phone, and if I'm taking a picture, I at a minimum am doing something here to make noise, or I have a crinkle ball, or I'm going pss, 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 or whatever it is. I hope that wasn't too loud, you guys, sorry. I'm making some kind of noise or showing a toy behind the camera. And then, of course, the more personality, the better. Don't be scared to share a photo that, like, the kitten looks kind of crazy in. If I get a picture of Clem with his mouth closed and a picture of Clem with his tongue sticking out, the one I'm going to share is with his tongue sticking out, because people just love it. Even if they're making kind of a sour face or they look kind of silly, like anything that shows their personality, take that and run with it, because people really like those unique shots. I do want to mention that my partner Andrew is a professional photographer who focuses on cats, and he has a book, How to Take Awesome Photos of Cats. It goes a lot more into detail on both phone photography as well as dedicated camera photography, and it's just a really fun, cute book. So that's something that you can pick up to help you with your photography skills. Photography is really interesting and really important if you're into animal welfare. You really do have to be able to take a good photo, because that's how you can show people who the kitten really is. You know they're awesome, but now it's time to show potential adopters that this kitten is beautiful and amazing. Now, you also want to be writing an adoption bio that's going to go with your kitten's photo. So just a photo enough is not enough to go on whether you want to adopt an animal. You really want to have a bio. And that bio is going to be posted in several different places, which we'll talk about. But let's talk about what goes into the bio. There's really 5 different parts, and I'll show this in an example video. But, we want to capture the reader's attention. We want to connect with them and make them feel that, wow, that's the one for me. We want to share special traits, so physical and behavioral traits. Never just, this is a fluffy kitten, and never just, this is a playful kitten, but like really, use your creative writing skills here. Go back to English Composition 101 and, use some of those good adjectives to describe who this kitten really is and what's it like when you're hanging out with them. Obviously, you want to state the facts. This is a thing that people miss sometimes. State the facts. What's their age? What's their sex? What's their, any conditions that they have? Where are they located? Provide information on how to contact you. And here's a little video where we're going to put all of that together. We got some great photos of Peppermint, and it's time to write her bio. So what goes into a kitten bio? For me, it's really 5 distinct things I'm looking for in a great kitten bio. Starting with number 1, an attention-grabbing title. You could write the best bio in the world, but if people don't stop to read it, it's not gonna get seen. So you wanna make sure people actually click on your ad or stop when they see your poster in a cafe. You could always write a ho-hum title like Kitten Seeking Home, but what about something like, this Scraggle Muffin wants to be the queen of your heart. It's pretty eye-catching. We could plop a little crown on your head. I mean, who's gonna resist clicking on that? So now that you've got their attention, you want to try to instantly connect with the reader. What I want you to do is try to create a bridge between the kitten and the potential adopter so that they have something to walk across. For instance, if the kitten really likes your dog, you could say, this dog-friendly kitten just wants a pup to snuggle. Then people who have dogs are going to see that and go, wait, that sounds like my home. Or in Peppermint's case, she's so snuggly, maybe she'd like somebody to just hang out with and watch TV. So for her, let's say something like, if you're a TV binge watcher, Peppermint wants to warm your lap. Now people who are TV binge watchers are going to read that and go, wait a minute, I have a lap and my lap needs to be warmed. Maybe the scraggly queen is the one to warm it. So when you insert this relatable but specific description, you really are building a bridge that's going to help people feel like, hey, this might be the kitten for me. Now we want to describe what makes this kitten special, both physically and behaviorally. Maybe it's a kitten like Sage. He's so chill and relaxed, and he feels like this beautiful little fluffy cotton ball. He has this adorable high-pitched meow that makes him sound like a squeak toy.
You've got the cutest voice.
Or maybe it's a kitten like Flower, who has this adorable little mustache. I call it her boop buttons. Flower is so playful, and she gets really sassy and makes these funny sounds when she's playing. So you could talk about these various traits. So what do we know about Peppermint? We know that she's got this really soft coat that kind of looks like Constant Bedhead. We know that she's a big purrer and she loves to snuggle. And we know she has funny, whimsical eyebrows. Yeah, you got eyebrow goals, girlfriend. So maybe for her, what I'm gonna say is, this kitten has the most amazing, whimsical eyebrows. She's affectionate and she has constant bedhead, which is appropriate because she likes to hang out and snuggle in bed a lot. Oh, thank you. She's licking me. You want to try to paint a picture of who this kitten is, so even though the person hasn't met them yet, they feel like they know them. Now that you've described the kitten, you want to state some basic facts like their name, their age, their sex. You can put when they'll be available, any medical care they've received like spay, neuter, vaccination. And of course, if you're posting this on social media, please make sure that you actually include the city that you live in. Otherwise, people might scroll past and not realize that this kitten is right down the street. Last but not least, you want want to include your call to action. This is where you're going to ask people to reach out and contact you. You're going to let them know how to do that, whether that's going to a website to fill out an application or submitting an email somewhere. Make sure that you include this crucial contact information. Otherwise, people might fall in love with Peppermint but not know where to reach her. So those are the basics of your kitten bio. Let's put it all together and see how it looks. Okay, so let's see what Peppermint's adoption bio ended up looking like. So it says, this Scraggle Muffin wants to be the queen of your heart. If you're a TV binge watcher, Snuggly Queen Peppermint wants to warm your lap. This fluffy and affectionate kitten has a deep rumbling purr, constant bedhead, and the most amazing whimsical eyebrows, which you can see in the photo. She's a female kitten who's been spayed, vaccinated, dewormed, and microchipped, and now she's ready for her forever home. If you live in the San Diego area, you can apply to adopt Peppermint at orphankittenclub.org/adopt. So that's a pretty concise, it's a pretty concise bio, but it tells you everything that you need to know, all the facts, all of the fun little idiosyncrasies about the cat. And I do have to say, please lean into any weird stuff that you think about this cat. I know a lot of us, we have funny nicknames we give the kittens, or, we notice really strange little details about them. And one thing that I think can really benefit the kitten is to lean into that. I have a kitten right now who's just a all black, short-haired kitten, but his name's Darwin, and I just one day looked at him and said, his head is shaped like a pound cake. That doesn't make any sense, but I just shared online, this is Darwin, his head is shaped like a pound cake, and everyone loves Darwin now because we all call him a little pound cake head, and it's just a weird, funny thing, but that one little note, that one little detail that you give might be the thing that makes somebody just laugh or feel connected to that animal and go, I love him. He does have a head shaped like a pound cake. So, don't be scared to write something a little bit silly. If you feel like you're doing marketing here, you kind of are, but I have to say, there's no one easier to do marketing for than kittens, because they're so lovely. They kind of write their own bios, don't they? Okay, so now you have your photo, you have your bio. Where do you put this stuff? Well, if you are fostering through an organization, they're probably going to have a website where all of their adoptable animals are. So shelter adoption website for sure. Talk to your foster coordinator if you are with a program. They're probably going to request the bio and the photo from you, so you can start putting that together once they're nearing adoption age, and they'll put that on their website. A lot of the time that's enough, but there are also other websites you can use, Pet Finder, Adopt a Pet. If you're not in the United States, I know there are websites like this in other countries. Neighborhood listservs are a really cool thing to do. So if you have a community board in your neighborhood, or you can use Nextdoor, a lot of people check those, and you can let people know, hey, I'm your neighbor and I have these kittens for adoption. You can post your photos and your bio there. You can also use social media, ask people to share. I will tell you that when you actually say please share, ask people to share, giving a specific call to action, people will be more likely to do that. You could send it out to colleagues in an email and ask them to share it with anyone who might be interested. And then honestly, old school flyers are awesome. I love making old school flyers, and we do that even with Orphan Kitten Club. We, make old school flyers, and some of them we'll print and hang in a cafe or in a grocery store or at the gym or anywhere that, you can post it in a workplace, and that will let people see the kitten too. So lots of different places that you can advertise your kittens. Now, if you're fostering through an organization, most organizations, they're going to have an adoption process. So you don't really have to worry about a lot of this. And I want to emphasize that I strongly discourage people from doing this on their own if you have the option of being with an organization, because an organization is going to have all this structure in place. You don't have to worry about how to create an application, how to vet a kitten adopter and whether they're a good home. That's what these organizations do. They supply you with everything you need, from vet care to helping find the kitten a home. So if you're fostering independently, check out and see if there is a shelter or rescue that you can foster through, because they're going to give you all this structure, but I'll kind of explain how it works. There might be some people who don't have access to that or who are curious about how this works. Most cases, the adopter is going to fill out an application. And I'll tell you, we do this even with our best friends. Even if my best friend wants to adopt from me, they still have to fill out an application. They fill out an application, and that is really a screening process. So the application is typically not the whole process. That's kind of the screening process. But every single organization is going to be different. So I have to emphasize, I'm talking about how I do adoptions and how my organization does adoptions, but you will work with your foster program and you will do whatever their adoption process is. But in general, the screening process is the application. You have an opportunity to ask some questions. This is sample application questions. This is not a full adoption application, and this is not how every organization is going to be, but this is some of the questions from the Orphan Kitten Club application. So you can see, I'm asking some basic questions. Who lives in your house? Do you have animals in your house? If so, tell me about them. You can ask kind of these open-ended questions that allow you to get to know the person. So maybe they'll say, I have a 2-year-old really playful cat who is always walking around the house meowing like they're looking for someone. And I'll go, that might be a really good fit for a kitten. You can ask, questions that are close-ended too, so things that are multiple choice, things that can tell you, does this person meet your minimum requirements, such as, do you intend to declaw the cat? Like, we will not adopt a kitten into a home that will declaw. So if the person selects yes, then that person is not eligible to adopt. If they select not sure, then that's an awesome opportunity to educate that person. And we do have wonderful adopters who have selected not sure because they weren't sure. Maybe they had a declawed cat growing up. They don't know very much about it. And so we'll still do a follow-up with them, but we'll have a conversation and we make sure that they, if they're not sure when they apply, they are sure once they've had a conversation with us that they will not be declawing. And then, you can ask questions like, will you be the primary caregiver for the kittens? So there's all these different questions that you can ask. But all of this is leading you into a discussion with the adopter. And like I said, every application process, every adoption process is going to be different. But in general, what research shows over the years, there's been a lot of research published about adoption processes and what seems to be the most effective. And really, animal welfare has moved away from this sort of like checkbox form of adoptions and moved a lot more towards conversations-based adoptions. And this is how I do my adoptions. Conversations-based adoptions means that you actually just have a conversation with the person. You can follow up on their application, ask any, follow-up questions you have. So maybe someone will say, I move a lot, and so then I'm going to make a note of that when I talk to them and just ask them to clarify, like, okay, so you move a lot, so can you talk to me about how you would integrate a cat into your moves? What would that look like if you move across the country? Talk to me about how you're going to handle that with this, cat in your life. It's also an opportunity to do some adoption counseling, which is great because even if this person doesn't adopt from you, you've now had the opportunity to educate them about, whatever it is. So be kind, be open when you're talking to people, educate them and just be, kind of receiving information from them about who they are and whether it's the right fit. And most importantly, please don't micromanage your adoptions. Don't seek like the perfect home, because that is going to prevent you from being able to continue saving lives, right? We want to have our kittens go into good homes that are going to treat them right. But if you have a specific home in mind, like, they have to be, a family with 3 kids and they have to have a young black cat that matches the little kitten, like, just don't seek perfection, right? If the home is not your 100% perfect home, but it's a good home, please adopt that kitten into a good home and let's move forward and open our home up to future foster kittens, okay? So let's decrease barriers to adoption. That's going to help us save lives. So some discussion points when you're doing an adoption. And again, if you're with an organization, they're doing this part for you. You are not doing this part. But if you're the one doing the adoption, you just have some discussion points. Tell me about your history with animals. I like asking open-ended questions. Tell me about your history with animals. And then if they say anything that seems concerning or you want clarification, just ask. You can ask them. I like asking about what's your expectation for transitioning into the home? That's a good question, because if they say, well, I expect them to come home and I want my cat to immediately be their best friend, that's probably someone who has a little too high of an expectation of how adoptions work. So that doesn't mean they can't adopt from me. That just means that we want to have a conversation about that and say, well, here's how that transition can look or may look or typically looks, and we talk through that. Are they ready for long-term commitment? Have a conversation with them about that. So I just want to keep emphasizing every adoption process looks different. This is kind of just what I do. But these are some examples of things that would catch my eye, either as red flags, where we're not going to proceed, yellow flags where we're going to have some more discussion, and then green flags that are like, okay, this is definitely going to work out. Some red flags would be an unsafe living situation, or an unstable living situation. If the person is, just about to move, or they're in an environment that's not going to be safe for the kitten, obviously we're not going to proceed. Any history of abuse or neglect, if not all members of the household are on board, that is a big one that I see sometimes people say, well, I want to adopt the kitten. I live with my mom and dad and they don't know and they're going to be furious with me. We're not going to adopt into a situation where the whole home is not on board. That's just not a good idea for the kitten or for the family. Some yellow flags would be things like, maybe in the past they did something like declawing or surrendering an animal, but we have to understand people do change, grow, learn. There's different situations that come up, so we're not going to be so stringent about this. We want to really just have a conversation with that person and find out, where are they now? What's their life now? And do some education and do some discussion. If their interest is really recent, like they just decided today that they should get a kitten, then I would just investigate that a little more. That's not necessarily a no. It's just we want to make sure they've really thought it through. And then unrealistic expectations. Like I said, if they're like, I really want to have this kitten be best friends with my cat right away, we're going to investigate that and talk about it. Green flags would be, they've been carefully considering this for a long time. They've done their research. Everybody is on board with adopting. That's probably a home that's going to be suitable for a kitten. Okay, pre-adoption checklist. These are just some of the things that are typical for a shelter or rescue to provide. But every organization is going to be different. So please, go with what your organization does. But these are usually some of the things that are provided before adoption. Vaccination, that is age appropriate, however many boosters they can get before they are adoption age. Usually you're doing an FIV and feline leukemia test, dewormer for sure, microchips, and spay-neuter. And we'll talk about all of the preventative health care next week in the Keeping Kittens Healthy webinar, so you can tune in for that. But I want to point out, obviously right now we're living in a really different time. During a global pandemic, a lot of things have changed and we have to be flexible. Animal welfare has to be flexible. That's one thing about being involved in rescue is you have to learn how to sort of be resilient and be malleable and work around different situations because there's things that are going to come up all the time. So spay-neuter services are decreased in a lot of parts of the country right now. And what I will say about that is, it is really not typical for rescues to adopt out an animal who is not spayed or neutered. But right now, probably the best thing that we can do is proceed with adoptions because we don't want to stop having access to rescue services for animals. Intake has not slowed down for kittens, so adoption should not slow down either, but we want to be cautious about how we do it. So there are foster to adopt programs. That is where the adopter actually signs up as a foster parent, and they foster that animal until they are spayed or neutered. So we are kind of delaying that surgery until it's something that can be safe to do, and they can sign a foster to adopt agreement. Opposite sex pairings is not something I would do with a foster to adopt agreement because, as these kittens, mature and become sexually mature, we don't want them to, have an accidental litter in the person's home. So I would not do opposite sex pairings if you're not able to access spay neuter right now. And then no contact adoptions absolutely can and should occur right now. We want to protect ourselves. We want to protect our adopters. This is how we're doing adoptions right now. Obviously, typically we would, shake the person's hand and give them a hug, but right now that's not how anything's being done. So this is actually in front of my house. We just right outside my front door put a little folding table, and we put all of the materials out. So the paperwork, which we sign in advance, you can use services like DocuSign to sign everything in advance. And then once the adopter arrives at my house, they will text, and I take the kitten, put them in a secure cardboard carrier, something that, these are just disposable carriers they can take home. And I put them out on the table, and then I go back inside, and then the person can come and they can scoop up their kitten, the paperwork, we send them with a little picture of them. You don't have to do that, but it's a cute thing that you can do. We like to send our kittens home with any favorite toys. So if they had a toy they loved in foster care, I'll pop that in their goodie bag, send them home with whatever it is that they need. But please protect yourselves while you're doing this. It is absolutely possible, and this is an adoption we did last week, and we're inside on the other side of a glass door, and there's Chris's adopter holding his picture. I think the hardest thing about this is just not being able to give the adopters a hug, but absolutely you can do this, and I encourage you to. Let's keep adoption alive, and let's keep this whole thing moving, even in the face of this pandemic. Let your kittens fly. I think that this is the hardest thing for a lot of people to really wrap their head around, is that you're pouring all this love into these babies and then you are letting them fly free. But we have to remember, kittens don't need us to keep them. They just need us to keep them alive for a period of vulnerability. And then once they're no longer vulnerable, once they're, healthy and they are playful and they have all the skills of eating food on their own and they're really independent, those kittens don't need us anymore. They don't need foster care anymore. So they just need us to keep them moving and grooving until they are old enough for adoption. So I really look at this as the intersection between homeless and home. On the left, we have a kitten who is not adoptable. This is a very vulnerable animal. This is an animal who really, really is dependent on a foster home. And on the right, we have basically the most adoptable animal in the shelter, right? That kitten's gonna get scooped up the first day that somebody sees them. So this is an intersection, you guys, and think about what it's like when you have a situation where there's someone vulnerable standing in an intersection. What you have is, if a child is crossing a busy road and it's a dangerous time in their life, what do? We put a crossing guard there. We put somebody there to help escort them to safety. And that is why I say foster parents are really like crossing guards. We're not like parents. The parent is who they're going home to. Just like a child crossing the road to go home, that's where their parent is. But we're the crossing guards, and we put ourselves in the middle of the intersection and say, I'm going to stand here, and if anybody enters this dangerous intersection of 0 to 8 weeks, I'm just going to help them out. I'm going to hold their hand and walk them across the sidewalk, or hold their paw and walk them, through the weaning process and through litter training and through playing. And you're going to be there for them just like a crossing guard is there for a kid. But once they reach the safety of the sidewalk, once they're an independent animal, they don't need us anymore. And it's a beautiful thing. That's the goal. That really is the goal. We have to remember when we say goodbye, they get to say hello to their forever. And if you think that you're the only person who can give a good life to a kitten, you're absolutely wrong. I always think, my kittens, I'm actually preparing them to meet their best friend. And I'm preparing somebody's kitten for them, that this is going to be their best friend. It's a beautiful matchmaking service. And, this is 2 of my kittens going to their adoptive home. That's Philip and Winston. And it's just awesome. Look how happy they are. I mean, you get emotional because you see that you've made somebody's life so beautiful. And, without foster parents, there aren't adopters. And without adopters, there aren't foster parents. So we all play an important role here. And once my role is done, it's time for them to move on to their next step, which is the first day of the rest of their life. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And emotions are healthy. I know this is kind of funny. I put a picture of myself crying, but this was last week. That's Jimmy. I love this cat. I raised him since he was a little boy, and I cried when he left. I don't cry when most of my kittens leave because I've been doing this a long time, but I still cry sometimes. And what I want to say with this is, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be emotional. Emotions are cool. Emotions are how you know you're alive, right? I mean, we watch movies that make us cry because it helps us feel like, wow, you're witnessing this beautiful journey and you feel so emotional. It's a beautiful thing. That's what fostering is. It's a beautiful journey. You will be emotional about it. And if you're not emotional about your babies, then you're probably not the right person to be fostering, right? So if you feel strong emotions, if you feel like, you would love them so much that you would cry giving them up, then you are the person they need. Emotion is totally okay. But love is not about owning someone. It's about helping someone, right? It's about meeting them where they are. Remember that our goodbye saves the kitten a spot, and the next kitten a spot. I look at these kittens from a couple years ago and I think, I'm so glad I adopted them out because Jimmy wouldn't have had a spot in my home if I had kept 5 cats, right? If I kept every foster that I've ever raised, I would have a house with hundreds of cats in it, and I wouldn't have room to keep fostering. So let's focus on the goal. I always say goodbye is the goal. Goodbye is the goal of fostering. So focus on your goal and really celebrate. When the kittens graduate, we celebrate, and I highly recommend that you do actually celebrate, like literally celebrate, because this is emotional work, and we want to protect ourselves against burning out or feeling compassion fatigue. We want to protect ourselves. We don't want to feel like this is heavy and sad. We want to feel like this is buoyant and awesome, and we're so happy and celebratory about what we're doing. So when your kittens get adopted, I highly recommend doing something like have a pizza party, make scrapbooks of before and after so you can look back and go, wow, I'm awesome. Look what I did. Look at what I did. I made this kitten transform. You can make a little graduation hat for them. You could, leave yourself notes around the house, whatever it is. However it is you celebrate, please do celebrate, because you are a hero. If you're doing this work, you are totally a superhero for kittens, and I want all of you to really feel that and know that. So thank you for watching this webinar. I know I talk a lot. I went a little bit over, but hopefully you learned something. I want to remind you that the next webinar is May 2nd, and that is the Keeping Kittens Healthy webinar. I'm going to have a lot of good information in that. Super excited to share. I'll be talking about preventative care for kittens. I'll be talking about, common health conditions that can come up and how you can work with a veterinarian to provide care to these kittens. We'll be talking a lot about fragile felines and, the different things they go through. And most importantly, providing that supportive and monitoring care that they need to get them through and get them healthy. I want to remind you I have some additional resources. My YouTube channel is filled with lots of videos that can be very helpful for different subjects. I have written information online on kittenlady.org. I do have a website full of articles of foster kitten information. And finally, Royal Canin has an awesome website too. You can get a lot of information on there. And the thing I want to call out this week is that they have this amazing program right now where during this pandemic, I know a lot of people can't access veterinary care as easily. So they actually are providing free chat, either text or call, I believe, with a veterinarian 24/7. And you can find out about that on their website. And I'll also be sending some more information out about that in the additional resources. So if you're registered for this webinar, then I'll send out the information for that. If you're not registered, go register right now, kittenlady.org/webinar. Register for this webinar, and then tomorrow or the next day I'll be sending out those additional resources, including information about this very cool program where you can chat for free with a vet. That's available through May 31st. So thank you guys to everybody who's still watching. I'm going to answer a couple of questions now. So let's see what questions we have. A lot of really good questions coming in. Thank you guys. So let's see. My 6-week-old kitten pees everywhere but the litter box. I changed the litter type 3 times and placed several around the room. Help. Yeah, so, kittens, most kittens do pretty well with this, but some kittens will find alternate places to pee. I mean, my first piece of advice would be to look at where she is choosing to go, because when the kitten is going somewhere else, they're kind of trying to send you a message that they are not liking the texture of the litter, or they're not liking the placement of the litter box. Most kittens want to go in a corner, but maybe this kitten wants their litter box to be somewhere else. So if you're seeing that the kitten is going in a specific place, I would literally clean it up and then put a litter box right over where that kitten was going. See if you can catch them in the act and put them in the litter box. If they are pooping outside of the litter box, put their poop in the litter box so they start to associate it. And then you're doing the right thing by trying to change the litter. But if you see that they're peeing like in a specific kind of place, like on blankets or, something like that, then, maybe just try to be cautious about removing some of the places that they want to go, or switching it up so that the litter box kind of almost mimics the preferred place that they are going. I hope that is helpful. Can you discuss when it's a good time to separate a kitten from a feral mom? Yeah, so I will be doing a talk all about feral kittens and feral moms on May 9th, but I'll quickly say, with any mom situation, the kittens are going to be weaning and going through all of that with mom. And once the kittens are like eating really independently, you can slowly start to pull them off mom, and mom can get placed for adoption. With feral moms, you want to be a little bit cautious about leaving them with mom too long, because the kittens have this socialization window. I'm going to talk a lot about this on May 9th, but they have this socialization window where they're really deciding what they think about humans. And so if we leave them with mom too long, they're going to decide, I don't like humans. This is if mom is feral. So ideally, we want to pull the kittens from mom a little bit younger than if she was friendly. And also because mom doesn't want to be in foster care. We want to get mom, spayed and back out to where she is from. So I would say, around 5.5 weeks, if those kittens are able to eat on their own, we're going to pull them off mom, get mom spayed, and she'll go through, her TNR program or whatever it is that she's going through. We're going to get her spayed and get her out of there. She'll be happy, and then the babies will have an opportunity to socialize. Okay, what do you do if a kitten keeps eating the nipple on the bottle and ends up swallowing the tip but isn't quite yet ready for slurry? So this is something that people see with bottle babies. Sometimes as they get older, that kitten is very bitey, biting on the nipple of the bottle. Ooh, sorry guys. And if the kitten is doing that, they should not be able to shred the tip of the nipple unless they have premolars. And if they have premolars, those are the teeth on the side. If they have premolars, they can be weaning. So I would say if your kitten is like aggressively biting the nipple, then definitely you want to remove them from the bottle and start trying to wean them. You can give them their formula in a dish and show it to them that way, show it to them on a spoon. But we don't want our kittens to be biting and shredding nipples, definitely, because if they ingest that could be really dangerous for them to swallow a foreign object like that. Okay. Is mother and baby cat food for the kittens and also nursing moms. Yes. So when you have a nursing mom, the mom actually has different nutritional needs than a cat who's not lactating. And typically you'll actually want to feed the nursing mom kitten food, the same thing that the babies are eating. So that's why it's called mother and baby cat. So the mother and the baby cat can both be eating that mother and baby cat food, and that's good for mothers and kittens up to 4 months old. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. If you're fostering a mom and a lot of mom and babies questions, that's awesome. If you're fostering a mom and babies, will the mom wean the kittens on her own, or does she need help? So when you're fostering a mom and babies, the mom is going to have her food sitting out, and the babies might actually start to discover it once they are, maybe closer to like 4 weeks old. They're going to go over and go, this is interesting. They notice their mom's over there, so they're like, what's she got? I want to check this out. But they're not going to typically eat like a whole lot at first. But I think it's great that they can explore in that way. That's much more natural, honestly, that they just kind of are exploring, going, oh, that's weird, and then going back and nursing with mom. So they will naturally wean, but I would say at 5 weeks, you want to start really encouraging them to wean, like encouraging them to actively eat the food. Mom will appreciate you for that because she doesn't want them nursing on her with all of their very sharp teeth. And, once they're 5-6 weeks, they have very sharp teeth, and she's probably a little bit over it. So yeah, you can support the kittens through the weaning process, but it is okay if they start to access the food a little younger if mom has it. Okay, how long should babies be kept separate from other adopters, other cats? Okay, so a kitten gets placed into an adoptive home. How long do you keep them separate from the resident cat in that home? Well, I would say from a health perspective, if the kitten is getting adopted, they probably have already, been through 2 weeks at least of foster care. They've had their preventative care. That kitten is healthy, because we're not going to be adopting out any kittens that, have an acute health condition. So health-wise, they are ready to meet somebody else. But behaviorally, we're not going to take a kitten home and go, look, Fluffy, it's a new kitten, because that can be really overwhelming to the resident cat. I'll say that kittens adjust much faster than adult cats do. So, the kitten will probably adjust quite quickly to the new cat, but the new cat needs time. So I would say there's a lot of great information out there about introducing resident cats with new kittens. Watch some of the videos that Jackson Galaxy has. You can read a lot of information online about introductions. But, the general rule of thumb is that you want to keep them separate for at least a couple days, and then do some light scent swapping, sight swapping, so they can smell each other, they can see each other from a distance, but you're never like forcing them on each other right at once. But watch some of the videos and read some of the resources about cat introductions. Okay. All right, let's take maybe one more question, and then we will wrap it up here. Okay, last question is, my shelter gave me kittens who are 3 weeks old, but they're already weaned. Do I switch them back to bottle feeding? This is a really, really common one. So I see this a lot. Shelters say the kitten's 3 weeks old, but they're already eating on their own, and then they send them to a foster home. If the kitten is truly 3 weeks old, I would say absolutely they should not be relying only on a wet kitten food diet. Like 100% they should not. And I would be scaling them back towards having a diet that's more appropriate for their age. I can't fault anybody for saying that. A lot of shelters are overwhelmed with trying to find kittens homes, and they, might try to wean them really young, but that is not necessarily the best thing for that individual kitten. The other thing I'll say is that people aren't always aging the kittens appropriately. So if the kitten is really interested in eating meat, there's a good chance that they're not 3 weeks old. So I would look in their mouth. Do they have canine teeth? If they have canine teeth, they're probably like a 4-week-old. If they have the teeth on the side, they're probably 5 weeks old. So this is why telling what age a kitten is so important. So I would say look in their mouth. If they have canine teeth, it's normal for them to be exploring wet food, but not eating it fully as a meal. But again, every single kitten is different. So monitor their weight, monitor how they're doing, treat them as an individual, meet them where they are, and you can do a lot when you really just monitor and treat everybody as an individual. So I hope that is helpful. I wish I could keep talking to you guys forever, but I know it's Saturday. I appreciate everybody spending so much time with me today. Please do join me next week. This is going to be a really big one, guys. May 2nd, keeping kittens healthy. All of the questions you have about what do you do if a kitten has fleas? What do you do if a kitten's eyes are crusty? What do I need to know about kitten poop? There's a lot of kitten poop stuff in the next talk, you guys, so maybe that's not the best way to get people to come to it, but if you're anything like me, those are the types of things that might be really of interest to you. How do we keep our kittens healthy? So that will be May 2nd, next Saturday at 11 o'clock Pacific time, 2 o'clock Eastern time, and I hope that you'll join me for that. I want to say thank you again to Royal Canin for all of their support through this webinar series. I literally could not do this without their team, and I'm so grateful that we've been able to stream this both on my channels as well as theirs. So thank you guys, and again, please visit kittenlady.org/webinar for information on all of the future webinars and to register for today's webinar so that you can get that follow-up email I'll be sending out soon. So thank you guys very much, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.